Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have the young 20-something Professor Pixel here with me. Guys, I'm about to choke on my steak dinner tonight here. We obviously have a guest, Pixel, in our first watch of Columbo, Season 1, Episode 6. Short fuse with Roddy McDowall. And with all the Apes trailers I've been saying lately and shaking my head in sadness, I'm shaking my head in sadness because LK is the Columbia aficionado guest here. I know this is not a first watch for you, but maybe it's been a while since you've seen it because we've got an episode that I'll just start off by saying this, gentlemen. It's by far the worst episode I've seen of Columbo. I think literally it's one that they should probably have never released. There's a couple striking elements to it, but other than that, this thing is just, it's a piece of crap. And I have to say, I got to blame it on the writing, not Roddy McDowall. Otherwise, I think there was a seed of something really good here, but it just fell flat to me. LK, you're the guest here. What's your initial take on this episode before Pixel starts us off?
Yeah, well, so it's funny. It's definitely a divisive episode among Columbo fans. I think part of it is how much you enjoy or cringe at Malcolm McDowell's performance. But real quickly, it's funny you mentioned the part about the writing, because I did take a look at another website because I was curious about something else, and it talked about the fact that this was the last episode of season 1 that got filmed. And it came about because the network demanded to have another episode. So if it feels rushed, that's because it was.
Sure.
And, so a lot of people do put it in the lower category. It's one of those where a lot of people remember it for the final scene, which we'll talk about. But there's a lot of stuff in between to get to that's wonky. I mean, I still like Malcolm McDowell, and, I'll say too, it also plays on another theme that you're going to see throughout a lot of Columbo, that, one of the reasons to murder somebody is family.
The family that kills together stays together.
Well, it's usually a case of either, a sibling upset and killing another sibling, or a stepfather, or in this case, a step uncle getting in the way. Family is one of those themes that you'll see throughout as you watch the seasons of Columbo that comes through.
Pixel, initial impressions, take us in.
No, this episode is definitely a rougher one. The only thing close to a saving grace is actually Roddy McDowall, because he's just so engaging to watch, even though he's such an idiot.
Well, here's the thing. He is so totally believable in his character, but again, the way it's written, it's like, how can you make, a chicken salad from chicken shit? Because, again, it goes back to the idea that I've mentioned before in a lot of things. If you don't have somebody to root for, or at least be a moral son or relative to everybody else going on here, other than, say, of course, Columbo, and of course here we're talking about the bad guys, this is one where I want to see Roddy get it, because he's such an ass, but I get it and I understand it. And he actually is so good of an actor that this overly elaborate scheme that he devises to kill somebody and all that, I almost was rooting for him, but I was rooting more for, like, the episode to be over. But Pixel, I mean, I agree with you. Roddy McDowall's got a lot of juice in here. Take us away.
So what do you do when your uncle wants to kick you out of the family business? Because Roddy is called by his step uncle David to go ahead and have a conversation with him, and we get introduced to him after he's gone ahead. He's taken some photos. He's feeling quite giddy about it, and whenever he goes, he sits down with his uncle, just him, his uncle, and his chauffeur that's also a private investigator for been collecting data on Roddy. He goes ahead and explains that, Roddy, you're out of here. You're going to accept it because I've had my chauffeur watching you all this time, have some blackmail that I'm going to give to your aunt, and if you don't want that getting out, you're going to take this, give up your shares, and move away. And Roger obviously can't say much about it. So he's like, okay, well, he's not happy that his uncle wants to go ahead and sell the company. And we know that he is a pest from just the opening scene, him setting up his trap. It's okay. I'm gonna defer to you.
Okay.
That's all.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing with Roddy McDowall, well, the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, we mentioned how the show's early 70s, so we've got a lot of the 70s sentiment, not just in terms of the political landscape, but the way it's filmed and stuff there. I believe I actually saw a Kmart in this episode, or maybe it was the last one, the backdrop. But you get, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, but you definitely get the I'm not wearing underwear, my package is quite visible Roddy McDowall with the pimp hair and everything else. He looks totally apropos for this episode. But he's supposed to be the smart guy that knows how to devise things, and he's the rich guy in the sense that, you know, he's so smart you just put him in a room by himself. So what does he do to kind of, for his overly elaborate scheme? He's going to take a cigar and make it blow up in a car at some convenient timer like that to ace everybody. And I'm not even going to be upset at the overly elaborateness of the scheme, because frankly, I don't know if those are Toro Fuentes or what kind of cigar they are, but I like the fact that I've mentioned, as we've said before in many episodes, we got a lot of the cultured gentleman type stuff in here, that they refine, sophisticate. And here, of course, we get the cigar thing being the fort. And I thought, even by Columbo standards, this is a bit of a stretch as far as what I'm concerned here too. I thought they were going to do something with, you know, him just. Here's the thing with what they were doing with him, even with the mutton chops and everything else there. He starts off kind of being a goof, and you go, he's that annoying smart kid that just has a job because he knows somebody, so you hate him. But then later on, when you find out all the stuff that's going on with the business and all that, you kind of go, I get it, I understand it. But his performance is really good. And to your point, about Gregory here, the actor, yes, I did recognize him, but I'll talk more about the policeman we run across a little bit later. I thought he was a bit striking too. But part of what makes this feel rushed is, again, until Columbo shows up, you're like, man, this is just nuts. And the thing too that they didn't really dive into, that they could have just a little bit, and I'm not saying they should have, but LA was not founded on Hollywood. It was founded on oil. Right? I mean, so it's cool to me that they've got this great setup in a manufacturing chemicals plant in the 70s, because nothing says smog and pollution like the early 70s is the central LA basin with its whatever the name of the effect is, where you have the heat inversion, so the smog stays down there in the valley. I'm like, you can even see that in some of the episodes with the wind blowing and everything. I thought, this is great. But the car driving around, you know, at night when and then he pulls the cigar out and it goes kaboom. I'm like, okay, I get it. And then Columbo just shows up and starts to question him. And it's like, I think Columbo knew before he even walked up the stairs that this guy's guilty. Am I wrong?
I don't necessarily know up the stairs, but definitely what clued him in was, well, when we get to it where they're playing the phone recording, and he's furtively checking his watch every single time because he's afraid that the explosion is going to be on the audio tape, and that, you know, Columbo picks up on, because, you know, if there's one thing you learn is that, you know, Columbo is very much a person of attention to detail when it comes to others, not necessarily himself. Yeah, I mean, it's the beginning is weird. It's off pace a little bit. You know, what they're trying to set up is, you know, he's using his being a goof to cause a distraction and chaos in the office so that he can switch the box of cigars.
Yeah.
It's also, again, another thing that you'll often see, you'll come to notice as you watch Columbo episodes is, you know, the murderer taking advantage of a person who is a creature of habit. So, because in this case, what he knows about his uncle, and it's why, again, you know, you see him steal the two, you know, cigars out of the glove box to force him to open up that box, is that he knows that when his uncle's taking this drive up to the house, you know, or up to the vacation house, or I forget exactly what it is, you know, that he smokes a cigar, you know, in the car while he's going up there. So he knows that there's an opportunity. And if you kind of think about it, you know, what Roddy McDowall's ideal was that, you know, the car was going to blow up on this mountain road and then fall off the side of the road, and everybody's going to think that, oh, it was an accident, you know, bad weather and, lost control and they went off the cliff. Oh, well, it's an accident. Move on. But of course it, obviously doesn't turn out that way. I love James Gregory in this because, he basically just plays the same character, for those who aren't sure who we're talking about, he is the husband to Angela Lansbury in the Good Manchurian Candidate.
Yep.
As well as if you watched Barney Miller back in the day, he was the occasional commissioner that would pop up. Those are the two things I know him most from.
Isla Lupino is in here too, and Pixel. She was. I hesitate to say. I don't want to sit there and say like I know everything about a lot of older movies because I don't. So I don't even know if I'm saying it right if I say she was an A-lister. She was around a lot, but I only recognize Heist here and a few other names of stuff. She was in a TV show or two here, and obviously I thought, okay, it's great. They've got an older person like we've seen in some of these episodes here too. But the thing that really struck me is you get surprised when people get older, the stuff that they've been in, and then when later on when you watch other movies, you go, oh, this is that person. And to me, obviously, if you grew up in the 70s, 80s as a kid, you are familiar with the name Orson Welles, Charlton Heston. Of course, Shatner's still around in his 90s, but then you know them from movies at that time, and then you go back in her catalog and watch other things. I'm looking at Ida Lupino, and I'm like, oh, she did really great in a role. And I remember one of the first movies I ever saw in a drive-in theater was the original Rocky with Sylvester Stallone. But another one I saw too was a B-level movie, and Roger Corman, I think, was involved in this. Rest in peace, Food of the Gods, and she was in that too. And I'm like, I know this lady. Where did I see her for? I'm like, oh yeah, she was in The Devil's Reign and some other stuff too. But it's just one of those things where I go, okay, it's cool that they got names, but again, sometimes performances are what draw you out, because performance-wise, what happens next to me is actually what I thought was incredible about this episode. The whole idea of the cigar blowing up the car and everything to making it look like an accident seems very plausible. I've been up in California in the Yosemite area in the valley myself for a little bit. I've known other people that have been up there too, so I don't have a lot of experience with that, but it's breathtaking. It's quite striking, the natural beauty of it. Here, despite the fact that I'm an apologist for the Moonraker version of James Bond, which of course it's just over the top, and it's got a great cable car scene in here. What is going on in this episode here, I think, is just some of the most brilliant shots I've seen so far in Columbo, where they're with a cop, they're going up there, they're explaining the stuff that's going on while you're seeing everything go on. And by 70 standards, I'm thinking, God, has anything been done like this before? The shots are tremendous. I literally stopped and went, I wish I had a super high def version of this to watch it, because it was so stunning to me. And of course, it'll play a pivotal scene when we talk about the end here too. But when Columbo meets him and they get in the Jeep and they drive around, if you've not been on a road where literally you look outside the side window and you see nothing down, or you don't see boulders tumbling down or goats or any sorts of weird stuff like that, if you haven't done that in the mountains, it can be just frankly terrifying or whatever. But I thought this whole setup of him, checking the place out and then checking Roddy McDowall out was pretty good, because this is when Roddy McDowall, you go, I don't like the fucking silly string in Columbo's hair while he's interrogating him. I thought it was just so cringy to me. But this is where Roddy starts to turn in a real ass. Props to him. But this is so uneven. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that. The shots, you're right, are beautiful. And the cable car itself just I love that Columbo. He gets sick on a boat. He gets sick in the sky. He can't have either way. He just likes his feet on the ground.
Motion sickness is no joke, though. If you get it or something happens, you get a concussion and you get sent. It is just the weirdest feeling. It's worse than nausea without vomiting or whatever. It's disgusting. And things like that can trigger it. So yeah, it is funny that Columbo's now starting to get some more character traits like we were talking about that haven't really been dialed in yet. I think that's a good observation on your part.
Yeah. And honestly, unless we have more to talk about the mountain scene, I'd like to move into the next scene where we meet Everett Logan.
Well, the only thing I'll say about the mountain scene, because I wanted your guys' feedback on this here too, because this is somebody that I actually went and looked up. The police chief that's with him, he's not really what you would call, I guess, an A-lister or whatever. But for some reason, him talking to Columbo, I thought, this guy owns the scene. Not that Columbo's acting bad or whatever, but there's just something about his presence, I thought, with being a tough guy and just his voice and all that, that I thought really just stood out. I mean, as much as Gregory's there and I'm not knocking him or whatever, I just thought this guy, I think his name's Jason Wingreen, is an actor. He's a policeman in here. I thought he was tremendous, and I don't know much about him. I see that he's been in a few things here and there, a few episodes of Matlock, I guess, which I never really watched, but I was blown away. I mean, seriously, I was just like, man, it's weird how uneven this episode is, where you get some A-listers or older stars showing up, and not a lot is written for them. You would think that they would be for the role, but then you get somebody like this that hasn't done it. It's fine. I guess this guy was in Archie's Bunker's Place too, so yeah, that was obviously a long-running show, but I don't know. It's just something that stood out to me. I'm not saying it matters to the episode. It just stood out. That's all.
No,
Yeah.
you're right.
Well, and kind of in that scene, it's funny where he's really playing kind of the straight man to, I'm going to say it's unfair to call it the comedy antics
Right.
of
Exactly.
Columbo. I mean, but yeah, no, that scene's great. With the mountain scene, again, it's one of those things where I always love kind of the theater of the mind in terms of they do such a great job in terms of building up the tension and the suspense of, that this car is going to explode, but it's all the things that kind of just lead up to it, in terms of just that pacing. And again, you'll see it kind of again and again throughout, certainly like the first, I'd say, 3 seasons or so of Columbo. And I'll just mention too that you will see Ida Lupino again in I think it's season 3 in an episode of Columbo. So again, this is also one of those things where you will see actors kind of pop up again in Columbo playing completely different roles, obviously. And then one thing I did look up because I was curious about exactly where in Southern California this was. So
Big Bear.
the gondola scenes, that's out of Palm Springs. So there's a Palm Springs gondola that goes up into the mountains, and that's where they filmed the cable car gondola scenes.
Yeah, I looked that up too. It is interesting, and that's one of the cool things about TV shows is you look at it and it looks different, or makes you look something up and all that too. And that's one of the things now with the easy access to information that you just makes it interesting to talk about too. And of course, we're spending a lot of time talking about all these ancillary sidebar things rather than the main plot itself. And we're almost basically 2/3 through the episode. So let's kind of reassess where we're at. Columbo's onto this guy. I think Roddy does a great job here of kind of turning. But then this is where, in my opinion, Pixel, things start getting weird, where it's not enough for him to overly elaborately blow up a car with a cigar. And that's why I keep saying it, because it's ridiculous. He decides he's going to figure out an alibi by framing somebody by stealing his typewriter. I popped hard when I saw this because it was so ludicrous, but I don't know if it offended you, Pixel.
I did want to touch upon not Everett Logan himself. The actor is great, and that's fine. But what I wanted to talk about was, obviously, as somebody who's seen all 1,225 episodes of Dark Shadows, but when you have a classic actress to come in and have a presence on the scene, this aunt reminds me of some of the weaker times in that classic series when Joan Crawford, who played Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, would have less to do, so she appears for a few minutes and acts like she's worried, and they were like, okay, well, we have to work her in somehow. Because it's not until later, when the piece of information that you are giving with Everett, that she has some kind of influence, like, oh, I trust him implicitly, and I do enjoy her performance, but it just reminds me of that. It was sitting in the back of my mind as we were discussing everything around her.
Did you think you'd see Roddy McDowall snooping a secretary while they're at a strip club and all the psychedelic stuff is going on while the murder's taking place? I mean, it is kind of out there a little bit.
We didn't talk about that either, like all during...
Because they only give you a few seconds of it. They didn't lean into it. That might make you go, okay, that might have cheered you up a little bit. Again, the editing is choppy in here to me, in that they spent too much time on some stuff and it's too short in others. And that was one that they just kind of glossed over. Usually we've gotten some sort of, for lack of a better term, surreal look at each individual killing to some degree, some more than others, but at least something unique, whether it was the shot when Robert Culp whacked somebody. I mean, just so here, I'm like, okay, I'm buying it as a spoiled bastard going to clubs and banging the secretary. I'm down with this Roddy McDowall, not the whiny ass one we see with the silly string.
Yeah. Well, so again, this is something where, again, they take elements here, but they're done better in other Columbo episodes. For example, the murderer trying to set up like a time-based alibi being in public. We saw that, was suitable for framing. Right. And that was, much more better, well done. Again, you'll see where, the murderer, either willingly or unwillingly brings in a girlfriend or, fiance or mistress into creating the alibi. And again, you'll see that better done in other Columbo episodes. And it's where I think, because the network demanded this, this episode and it was hastily put together, I really do feel like at times they like pulled pieces from other episodes going, oh yeah, well, this kind of worked here, so we'll just use this and just kind of tweak it this way and that way. And I think that's, where, some of the issues as well kind of lie with the episode.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I also want to say that this is just another one of those cases where if Roddy McDowall didn't hang out with Columbo as half as much as he did in this episode, he probably could have gotten away with it.
Yeah. Again, another theme throughout, Columbo is, if the murderer just stopped, could check their ego at the door and stop trying to hang around Columbo and try to be smug and distract him or one up him, and just shut their mouth and went away, they would get away with it.
I can forgive that for most episodes. Right here, they just made a killer who you understand somewhat his plight, but then he's such a douche nozzle. Like, it's like, what?
He's got a sweet ride though. Which is kind of cool. And the fact that he's banging the secretary who's got that Christmas tree kind of outfit, which is kind of cute, but kind of hideous at the same time, right?
Those photos.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, that's the other thing too. He's got the photos of questionable nature, let's just say, that he can blackmail. But when he's getting in the car and he's telling her basically to fuck off in a roundabout way, I'm like, okay, this is where we're seeing a really good side of him being devious. And I just felt like that they went so many different directions with Roddy's character on what to do it. Is he the because he's young looking despite his age and his slight build, right? We know that from Planet of the Apes, we know that from Fright Night, we know that from everything. So here, when we see him several different times, it's like it's almost like the character is being restarted. And I don't think that's Roddy. He's totally committed. I think he's got the juice in each scene, but he's just, I don't know. It's so tough. It makes it hard to watch because I feel like every time he's on and it's a slightly different character, that it's like, it makes the feeling of the episode, which way it's going, is different. Are you the smart guy that hey, you're getting passed over for promotion because you got screwed? Are you a douchebag and you don't give a rat's ass playboy? Or if you're going to do it, be fully committed to one thing, not all these different ways he's doing it, because some of his best scenes to me are actually here in the last act.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, by far. And again, that's one thing that kind of overshadows the episode. But I just wanted to touch back real quick because you talked about the typewriter scene. And so at that point, did you realize, or did you understand in the beginning that McDowall was actually killing both of them? That it wasn't like the driver got accidentally caught up in this.
Oh yeah. No,
uncle and the driver were both had to be silenced, more or less.
Yeah, no, that was clear because obviously he's been using, if the driver survived, he still has all that information that he's connected. Ooh, secret investigator. Yeah. But that aside, no, he had all that and he needed him gone too. So good way to kill them both.
Kill two guys with one cigar. Is that the expression? I don't know.
That's our expression now. We just have to remember it.
All right, third act. Let's get into it, Pixel.
Mhm.
Third act. He thinks he's won. The aunt receives the disturbing information that her nephew has left to be found. Not only suggesting that he is behind the potential murder of her husband, but is screwing around with the secretary. How? Doctor photos. In Columbo during this scene, he is doing what he normally does. Now listen, this doesn't confirm anything. Nothing yet. I implore you not to act too hastily. But again, the Joan Crawford type aunt that she is in the scene, she goes ahead, sweeping motion. She's got the power to enact in one scene swift change. And so Roddy McDowall goes into the company the next day. He says to the secretary, well, it's best that you move on. I will help you all the way, and you can go to wherever the hell he's shipping her off to. Alaska. Yeah. No. And the office is being worked on, and Everett Logan comes in and says, why won't your aunt speak to me? I've been trying to get in touch with her. I don't understand. And that's when Columbo rushes in and says, we just found something. We just found something that changes the entire trajectory of this case. And Roddy McDowall at first doesn't want to go. But when Everett says that he's interested in seeing what this could be, his curiosity gets the better of him. He absolutely comes along, and we're back in the cable car. And up through the cable car, Columbo acts like he's just a little too excited to wait until they get to the top. Now's the best time to go ahead and see the new evidence they found. And it's a cigar case. His uncle's cigar case. With the cigars. And all during this scene, Roddy's thinking, sorry, I keep referring to the actor, not the character, but
Yep.
He's thinking that those are his, that he found the explosive cigars, and those are primed and ready to blow all up the mountain. And he's looking at his watch, he's checking it again, and Columbo all during the scene is saying, well, obviously it's an accident. We found the box, it's fine, no damage. We're good. This just another case, no foul play involved. But because he keeps checking his watch, he gets enough of it. He's going to blow up. He opens the cable car door. He's like, give him to me. And why would you do that? And the box opens. They spill on the floor. He's trying to collect them, and he realizes those aren't his cigars. And he's been trapped by Columbo.
Mm-hmm.
And he laughs.
Yeah.
And laughs.
And a maniacal laugh, no less.
Maniacal laugh. Well,
because at that point he's basically lost his mind.
Yeah. Yep. Because Columbo bested him, tricked him.
It's a great reveal because it's one of those things where we end up where we began for the most part. So basically, when Columbo shows up, not exactly, but close enough, where is that very striking cable car scene, and then here we get back up there again. So we've been here before. The show's smart enough to understand that we, as somebody watching it, want to see something, and we know what we want, but we don't know how it's going to unfold. That makes us to be chomping at the bit, whether or not we like the characters involved. And here, it's actually, I think, Roddy's best scene, because I'm thinking, how hard does it have to be as an actor to sit there and say, I got to solely, do this and do that. And you can see the way Columbo's doing it. He's kind of like triggering him a little bit. And it's a nice shot that, again, like I say, I think of the cable car scenes. I think of the cop with him going over stuff with the Jeep on the mountain. Whoever I mentioned actor-wise when I looked up, I don't know if that's the same guy or not, because it just occurred to me and I went, holy shit. The other guy that plays Mr. Logan in here, Everett Logan, William Windom, he's the guy that was in Star Trek for an episode or two at the very beginning. I'm like, oh, I've seen this guy in other things too. It's like there's so many people that have been in different shows that pop up here, whether the character actors or not. It's a shame that they had all these tasty ingredients, but it's like cooking seafood when it's frozen. It's not going to come out good no matter what you do with it. And the cable car scene at the end, I go, it's pretty memorable. It's pretty damn good. And, it's a bit ludicrous, obviously. And the fact that Columbo just kind of seems to be toying with them, it's kind of interesting, like playing with your food before, you eat it, because a predator wouldn't do that. So I don't know. I really like the cable car scenes here. I really thought with some of the stuff in this episode we'd have it, but this ending, again, cigar case, manly stuff, it's like, this is good shit. And I still think Roddy's acting here is actually pretty damn good and convincing. Again, I just felt like the writing made it seem like he was either a twerp or a rich guy or a smart guy. Make him one friggin' thing. The dude's driving around a Ferrari, banging the secretary. He can't be all that bad, right? He's young. He's got a lot of money. He's set up. Go somewhere. Do something with it. And unfortunately, unlike when we talked about the episode with the Wild Wild West #2 guy and the painting one, where he kills his lover. Yeah, she's more involved in the episode, right? Suitable for framing. So that was kind of delicious. It was necessary for it. Here it kind of is, but isn't. And it's just, like I say, they've got so many different things. And, I know, LK, you mentioned that this apparently was one of those studio interference type things. And I get it. It's exactly what happened in Twin Peaks season 2 when they said, we gotta tell our audience who killed Laura Palmer. And then, of course, once they did, it shit the bed. They should have never done that. So it's just, it really reminds me of that, but obviously not as devastating, because it certainly didn't kill off the Columbo to go on to be very successful. But despite as much as I'm ragging on this episode, I think it's by far the worst of everyone that we've seen and talked about so far. I do think this ending part here on the cable car is an excellent scene.
Yeah.
No, well, again, it wasn't studio interference the way Twin Peaks was. Basically, the studio interference is, hey, we want 8 episodes or 8 movies instead of 7. And it was like, oh crap. And so they had, I don't know, a month or 2 to crank one out. So again, it's where, again, you'll see better, frame attempts. Again, this one's so clunky, trying to frame the vice president that, and I agree too. I mean, in terms of just the whiplash with Roddy McDowall's character, because I mean, you have seen, where in other things, smart people, that are quirky, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to show him using that practical joker class clown ability to, get people, off balance and get people to underestimate him. But it's so over the top that it's just not, again, as you say, it's not done well. And at the same time, the reason why people do think of this episode sometimes, in a good light is because the beginning's really good, the ending is incredibly memorable, and then they just forget about everything that's in the middle of the episode.
That's true. Hey, we shot a bunch of hours of footage. Let's just edit it, come up with an episode. I mean, that's what it feels like, and that's embarrassing.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm still, even though it's really not a good episode. It's not good. I don't think it's bad. There's certainly a lot of bad television out there. I don't feel like this was a bad episode of television. It's just not good.
You just said it was bad.
No, it's not good. Well, it's okay.
Bad in the standards of Columbo.
Yes. Yeah. But bad in the standards of Columbo is still a lot better than some television. So, that ending scene is so memorable, though. It does help forgive some of the sins for me, but not all of them.
Yeah, it's like I say, unfortunately for me, it's the least memorable. It's the most annoying one of it. I think there are some seeds of some really good stuff here too. I'm obviously everything can't be perfect, even though we may want it to be. But like I've said before, I know it's hard for me to be excited about stuff. But watching a show like this, over 50 years old, that I've never watched before, except maybe a couple made-for-TV movies in the 90s or late 80s, not really knowing what the character is, I have been impressed with what they've done it, and I think appreciate now, as an older guy rather than a kid, the way they deal with some of the adult stuff in it, because sometimes when you rewatch things when you're younger, it's cool because you can get a different perspective on it. Maybe your tastes change a little bit. I don't know how much they really do change, but sometimes, the wisdom of the ages allows you an appreciation for what's going on. And Roddy McDowall, I probably wouldn't have thought twice about being younger because he's so physically unimposing. You can't think of him as an evil guy. No, even if he did something cool, like tried to kill some people with a blow-up cigar, because it's just so damn incredulous trying to get it done. But like I said, I think his acting was really good. So, when I compare him to other people, I'm like, man, just the episode itself is just a clunker. And Columbo, I have to say this, it didn't feel like Columbo to me. He was just there. And I don't know if that's a Falk thing. I don't know if that's an episode writing thing. It just didn't have the same juice. Like, maybe he didn't have a cup of coffee before some of his scenes or something like that, or maybe he was sick. I don't know. He was I felt like this episode really went through the motions, and that's what's pissing me off the most about it.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, and I would say especially the fact of, you've been watching all of these episodes together, so you have a very fresh memory of the previous episodes. So that is definitely going to impact what you think of this episode as well. If you're, like me sometimes, just, watching the random episode, you get a better, opinion of it.
Yeah, and I think the thing too about Columbo so far since the first seasons, we've only got one more episode and two of the original TV movies to cover to take care of it here on Xtreme TV. It's interesting to me because I've always felt that writing was a lot stronger back in the 70s on television shows than they are now. And it's weird how in today's times you can have things being so different. Like the cars that just explode automatically definitely started happening in the 70s. I always joked about with T.J. Hooker in the early 80s. But somehow it went from movies to TV, and it's definitely here in TV. And if you just think about it, one thing we always talked about in the Extreme movie shows, and we always like to say we're 80s based, no matter what movie we're talking about, no matter what genre, no matter what country it comes from, we always kind of compare themes. And one of the things we've always noticed is that how action movies changed in the mid 80s and how you could have a lot of nudity and violence and certain things that you just don't have now. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different things pop culture wise that seem to be in, but you're getting almost no nudity, almost nothing like that on movies, but you can get it in TV. So it's kind of weird because Columbo was very different the way they chose to go about showing you as a viewer how they went about solving a case. It was different than your Sherlock Holmes, which is kind of cool, or your Miss Marple, or any of those other type of British type things that make for good television. And honestly, something like, we go back to early detective films like with Humphrey Bogart or whatever. I just think of like some of the adult nature and some of those things that if you're not really listening and paying attention, you're going to miss some of the really high level political day-to-day stuff that still exists in today's world. And so Columbo, again, interesting the way he listens, how he deals with human nature. I do appreciate that. He's in that type A world. Again, we have a business here, and let's not forget Roddy's character. He's a real bright guy, almost like too smart for his own good type thing. I just don't know if he's met his match yet because some of the other ones I think had potential, but I'm still going back to that first episode, man. And gosh, the second and third were pretty good too. Even though I like Culp's character, the third one was still really good. It's just this one is just so far beneath all of them. It's embarrassing, really. And the last thing I'll say is this, Pixel, when you and I covered every episode of The Prisoner, some people say that's the third series starring the same character, Danger Man, and other stuff with Patrick McGowan. Half those episodes are phenomenal TV. The other half are fillers. The studio did exactly the same things they did here in Columbo. They just said, hey, we want to have a couple more, where the original artist creating it, Patrick McGowan, in that case, didn't want it. And that's why when we reviewed it, half the episodes, I feel like apologizing for because they sucked. And, I take one that's not that good here, at least entertaining somewhat in some scenes here, because you're absolutely right, guys. This could have been a lot worse. I'm not going to say it's salvageable, but it's just there. If it ever comes on again, I would never watch this episode. That's for sure.
Wow. Well, again, I'll say again, the seeds are there to be a good episode. Again, the problem is because it was rushed, they really didn't have time to, I think, fully kind of flesh things out and correct some of the mistakes and the issues and make it a stronger episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Next week's episode is an interesting one.
Well, can't wait to cover that here next week on the Extreme Movie Show there too. Okay, any other final thoughts before we go over to Pixel?
No, it's funny watching it closely again. This is where, and I'm sure we'll start talking about ranking, but I'm pretty sure I can figure out that you guys are going to have this one at your worst of the six you've watched so far. In years past, I would have had this ranked ahead of A Lady in Waiting strictly because I like Roddy McDowall. But watching them carefully again, I appreciate A Lady in Waiting a lot more, and this one I can see the kind of the flaws in that in the middle third of it, and yeah, it would be my bottom of the season 1 episodes.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about our ranking at some point here too. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I don't know that we've seen anything different outside the first episode or two, really. Maybe just some fine things there too that can be easily missed or whatever. Imagine we'll get a little bit more detailed in the character of Columbo and what happens, or maybe not. Who's to say? Pixel, final thoughts?
A very, very poorly put together kind of episode. The premise is fun. The triggering death is fun. Blowing up with a case of cigars. And that final scene is really solid. That's one that you could put on and just enjoy on its own, even without the context, because the context kind of just sucks. But that's pretty much it.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching and listening here, Columbo, on Xtreme TV, our sub show here on the Extreme Movie Show, Season 1, Episode 6. Short fuse, and we're going to have episode 7, and then we'll be doing the TV movies and potentially a ranking after that too. Stay tuned as we're getting ready to hop on the other stream here at 7 o'clock Eastern time, where we're going to be covering a Walter Hill film, because you have to say that like with some people here. And of course, that's going to be the Mickey Rourke one, Johnny Handsome. I can't say that with a straight face. Mickey Rourke, what the hell did they do to you, elephant man? Well, we'll find out and talk about it then. So for LK and for Professor Pixel and everybody involved here at the Extreme Movie Show, thanks for watching and listening. Have a good night. Stay extreme. Good night now.
This was not a Dan Curtis production.